And thank you so much, Adam and Robin and team, for putting this incredible event together and for inviting me. So I'm Al, and I'm an educator, I'm a mom, and I'm the founder and director of Fowler House Private School in Windhoek, Namibia, and also the co-founder and director of NeuroNexus Academy in Windhoek. So I have my laptop. I can't quite freestyle like Adam, so I just need my grounding point. So yeah. So Adam contacted me in the beginning of this year to find out whether I would be willing to invite some of our families who have children whose children are on the spectrum to join his trial. And I'm actually, I joined, I was very interested, very cautiously optimistic, and I'm actually now incredibly excited to share the feedback, the experiences and the observations from therapists, the parents and the teachers about the children who have been on the trial for the last few months. So I'll circle back to the trial. I'd really like to kind of start by telling you a little bit about my own journey into, the neurodivergent field. And Adam, just to kind of add on to what you were saying about neurodiversity being this spectrum that seems to be growing. So neurodiversity is like this big umbrella, and ASD is but one aspect that falls under this neurodiverse umbrella. ADD, ADHD, even dyslexia, dysgraphia, even people who have epilepsy fall under this neurodiverse umbrella. So it really is a very, very broad field. But today we will focus on the ASD. So my journey into neurodiversity started with my eldest son, Harry. He was born in New Zealand in 2013. And he has always been this incredibly bright, curious, intuitive young man, and he's definitely also very neurodivergent. He was born with ear problems and a hearing impairment, which means that his speech was delayed. He only started speaking around 3.5 years of age, and that was after numerous ear surgeries and very, very intensive speech therapy. Now, Harry presents with ESSENCE, which for those of you who haven't heard about it, it's this broad term that stands for Early Symptomatic Syndromes Eliciting Neurodevelopmental Clinical Examinations. So in my son's case, this features as stimming, ADD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, tics. He tends to zone out, high anxiety at times, and sometimes he struggles to emotionally regulate. Now, this was all very new to me as a new mom, even though at that stage I've already been in education for a number of years. And the first 7 years of Harry's life, I literally lived in therapists' offices. I spent a lot of time with psychologists and speech therapists and occupational therapists. And, all of these people really gave me such an incredible support during those years, but it was quite a scary time. And today he is this incredible, healthy, sweet, smart, and outgoing boy. He is very gifted in mathematics and in music, and he's incredibly passionate about the things that brings him joy. So at times we do see his challenges come through stronger than other times. They tend to hit in waves. I think also when life gets a little bit more stressful, some of the symptoms present more strongly, and other times there's hardly anything at all. So it does come in these waves. Now, when we returned to Namibia from New Zealand, Harry was 1, and I very, very quickly realized that mainstream schools could not offer him what he needed. He was very intelligent and very capable, but emotionally and socially, the mainstream traditional schooling environment just wasn't for him. And I realized at that stage, because man, did I deep dive. I asked so many principals, please may I sit in? You know, I want to observe, I want to see it from an educator's perspective, but also as a mother, I want to, you know, see whether this environment would work for my child. And so I really deep dived, and I realized that there was such a gap in, I don't know, call it information or awareness, or maybe teacher training, perhaps just outdated mentalities around children's brain development or their psychology and education and school environments. And I felt really, really sad and frustrated that children who were clearly just wired slightly differently were being punished or labeled as being a troublemaker or naughty or a bad student, or even worse, like a bad person, simply because they did not fit in this environment. Clearly, the fault lay with the system and not with the child, who just had different needs. I love that very sweet saying, you know, if a plant doesn't do well, doesn't thrive, you don't try and change the plant, you change the environment, surely, you know, to ensure that the plant thrives. So all of this big experience then inspired the founding of Fowler House Private School 11 years ago. So Fowler House currently has 120 students, and it is built on a commitment to quality, enriching, internationally accredited education that are provided in small class sizes and with meaningful one-on-one attention. In our preschool, we follow the North American Montessori curriculum, and it's such a beautiful curriculum. It really supports exploration and independence and intrinsic motivation, incredibly hands-on, practical, tactile. And in the primary school, we then offer the international Cambridge curriculum, and allowing every child to then grow at their own pace and tempo, still using a lot of Montessori materials to keep it very, very practical, hands-on, where you can manipulate and really get into the nitty-gritty of themes. So very practical learning experiences that connect the head, the hands, and the heart. So over the past 11 years, Fowler House has exploded, and it's currently one of the top academic schools in the country. And during this time, I mean, I would say, especially in the past 4 years, we started receiving phone call upon phone call from parents who had children with an ASD diagnosis. So what would happen, they would go onto our website and they would see, oh, small class sizes, lots of one-on-one attention, we're moving at the child's tempo, a lot of kind of like practical activities, you know, different learning styles are being incorporated, and thinking this might be a solution for my child. And the thing is, whilst inclusive, Fowler House is not a specialized environment. So we do actually accommodate quite a number of children on the spectrum, and they are absolutely thriving. But for the majority of children that I then interviewed, they were struggling with language and communication. And Cambridge is a very, for those of you who know the curriculum, it's incredibly language dense and intensive curriculum. So not an ideal choice. And this demand just grew and grew. I mean, at some stage, I was receiving between 3 and 4 phone calls a week. And I'm terrible at saying no or disappointing anyone. It's like my Achilles heel. And it just became so pressing. And my colleague, Velisha Dorfling, and I, we started engaging in this conversation, you know, from about like 3-4 years ago, you know, discussing the need and, you know, really playing with the idea, shouldn't we maybe consider opening up a school that's exclusively for children with autism? We also then, because I had this big network now of therapists because of my son, and, you know, Namibia is very small, so I had this network of wonderful therapists that I would then go interview and ask their opinion, because a lot of them had come to the Neurodiverse Center in Cape Town to do courses on, you know, being able to diagnose and look for the signs and how to support these children and to help to support the parents of these children. And all of them unanimously said that don't do a special needs school, right? Do a school that is only for children with autism, because autistic children are on their own wavelength. You don't want to mix them with other special needs. You know, like there are schools for that. What we really, really desperately need is a school that caters exclusively for autism, which is then what we did. So in 2024, we pooled our resources, and then NeuroNexus Academy came into being. So catering exclusively then for children with an ASD diagnosis. Now, up to this point, we've interviewed about 80 parents. And what became painfully clear to me as we've been interviewing family after family is that these people are so isolated, and I would go as far as to say ostracized, because they have a child on the spectrum. And I mean, it's devastating. I mean, every interview, like it's quite an emotional, it's like a proper session that you have with these families who have been through so much. And I came across this clip. I actually wish I saved it. It was fascinating. It was the psychologist who conducted all these interviews and had this trial with parents who have children on the spectrum. And what was really interesting and heartbreaking, really, is that these parents tested to have the same level of PTSD as people who have come, soldiers who have come back from war, as war veterans from war-torn countries, the same level of emotional distress and PTSD. And I think that this is something that we do not speak about enough. There is certainly not enough compassion or understanding or empathy for parents who need to navigate this pretty much alone, because there's so little out there, like resources or support-wise. So we decided then that part of what we want to accomplish with NeuroNexus is to be a bit of a hub of information and support, to educate the community about autism and neurodiversity, and also to create a safe space for families to connect and to break the cycle of isolation and stigma, really, around autism. Okay, so at NeuroNexus, our philosophy is very simple. Every child deserves the best chance to thrive, to be safe, respected, and loved. We designed NeuroNexus to develop key life skills and communication skills to support fine and gross motor development and to honor children's individual interests, their learning rhythms, and to embrace a multidisciplinary and collaborative approach with parents and therapists. And I'll circle back to the therapist, parent, teacher kind of collaboration later. So children at NeuroNexus are placed into one of two learning streams. So firstly, we have the academic track, where we use adaptive, internationally accredited online learning platforms and curriculums where they can work at their own pace and level. Or we have the skill building track, where we have very engaging classroom stations that are focused on creativity, independence, basic literacy, numeracy, and science themes, and a lot of sensory integration. So we work on an IEP systems. IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan, and we rotate the classroom stations weekly to keep engagement high and aligned with children's interests and passions. So we built NeuroNexus around proven autism supportive methodologies because, man, every child is so unique. What works for the one child will not necessarily work for the other. So I'm going to just quickly run through just to give you a ballpark idea of the methodologies we use, but it is in a very, very fluid kind of implementation depending on what works for the child. So at its core, we use TEACH, and it's actually spelled T-E-A-C-C-H. And this is a very highly structured, visual-based system that fosters independence and confidence. And then, when appropriate, we integrate PECs. There's a lot of, I'll tell you what all of these are. It's Picture Exchange Communication System. And this is such a great building block communication tool, especially for the little ones. And it basically is where the child can hand you a picture, say, of a snack that they want, or a drink, or if they want to go to the loo, and it's a really great foundational building block to encourage communication. We also, where appropriate, use ABA, which stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. And this system uses positive reinforcement, and I really want to emphasize the positive reinforcement because I know that it can be a bit of a contentious subject to the ABA. We teach the skills, using the positive reinforcements and to reduce unwanted behaviors. And it's often used to help with communication, with daily living skills, and with social interactions. Social stories is something that we love and use a lot. A social story is basically exactly what the name says. They are these short, sweet stories to help teach basic social skills, like, say, a child needs to go to the dentist. What can they expect at the dentist? Or if you're having an issue with turn taking, a very sweet, simple story about taking turns that make it real for the child. Also, these stories, very, very visual, lots and lots of pictures. A lot of children with ASD are actually incredible visual learners. So the visual part is a really big component of this. We also use AAC tools. Now, AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. This includes tools like communication boards, devices, apps, and these really help nonverbal children or minimally verbal children to express themselves and to communicate. AAC, it's Augmentative and Alternative Communication. If you Google it, there's a wealth of resources, and they are even free. They are free communication boards that one can print. We're having a huge one made for our playground, so that it's right there. And like usually the things that children may ask on the playground, like the swings, I need help with the swings, or I need to go to the loo, or I want my snack, so that they can just go point. So TEACH, just to go back to that, it stands for the Treatment and Education of Autistic and Communication Handicapped Children. And it's a program designed especially for children or people on the autism spectrum. And it's all about creating structured and supportive visual environment where they can thrive. Now, if you were to walk into one of our NeuroNexus classrooms, the first thing that you will see is like a visual schedule right there on the wall. The children adore it, and it becomes part of the routine. They'll walk up like, oh, we're starting with circle time. When circle time is done, whoever's turn it is can go and take it off, and it's attached with these little Velcro circles. Ooh, and that sound. They love that sound. It's like an award in itself. So they take it off and they put it in the little bucket, and then the next activity, so they know exactly where we're at any time in the day. So very clear visual schedules. Every activity has its own space, and tasks are broken down step by step. So the children always know what to do, how to do it, and what is next. It really helps them foster that sense of safety and security, because everything is predictable, everything is part of a routine, and it's easy to understand. So it reduces the anxiety, the confusion or stress, and of course then that makes it easier for them to focus and learn and to build independence. So we also have an on-site therapy room, but I do believe that this is quite standard for ASD schools. So in Windhoek, the occupational therapists, psychologists, and speech therapists use our therapy room to work with the students in this familiar and low-stress environment. We call it our fun room. They can't wait to go when it's their turn. And we really feel that this collaboration between the therapists, the parents, and the teachers, it has been It's been incredible. It has been incredible. As soon as we started this collaboration, the child's progress just seemed to skyrocket because everybody's on the same page. Everybody is doing what the therapist is doing in the therapist office, we're implementing in the classroom, and the parent is implementing at home. And as a result, you know, this continuity, this routine, this knowing of what to expect, the child settles, feels much more regulated, and really starts to thrive. And I really believe that, you know, this model, it fosters the best chance that these children have to reach their full potential. Our classrooms are very sensory aware. We offer both quiet regulation spaces and then communal workplaces, so that the children can choose the environment that supports their regulation and their focus. So we really believe that you have to build the environment around the child rather than asking the child to adapt to the environment. Okay, so I'm going to circle back now to the trial. I was really excited when Adam contacted me in the beginning of this year, because I'm constantly searching for integrative approaches, you know, that support the development of students that go beyond the conventional interventions. And when I introduced his protocol across both Fowler House and NeuroNexus, was a little bit, you know, didn't really know what to expect. But I must say that, you know, the feedback and the observations that we've had has been truly remarkable and really noteworthy. So within just a few weeks, we began to observe meaningful shifts across several core domains, being improved emotional regulation, that was a big one. Increased spontaneous communication, even amongst nonverbal children. Greater self-initiation, and improved sleep, which the parents were so happy about. Almost all of them commented on that one. And then enhanced participation in classroom activities as well. So one of our students, he's been with his occupational therapist, I think she said for 3 or 4 years at that stage, and he always required additional adult supports to be able to do his occupational therapy sessions. And after being on the trial for 2 weeks, his occupational therapist said that for the first time in the years that she's worked with him, he was able to work independently just with her. They didn't need the extra adult. So her mind was blown. She couldn't believe it. And then another student with significant anxiety started setting reminders for their daily routine, showing like levels of executive functioning that we have never observed with her before. Teachers reported calmer classrooms, more engagement with peers and teachers, faster regulation times, and much more presence. They also mentioned a general lift of optimism amongst the children, which I found that fascinating. And yeah, it's not that the classroom environment was depressed before, but it's almost like how the one teacher described it. It's almost like there's that spark and excitement, you know, that they've noticed like over the weeks since they started with the trial. Okay, and then parents echoed this with stories of improved connection, better sleep patterns, and then moments of emotional clarity that brought so many of them to tears. And I'd like to share a few of their stories with you. I think Adam did mention some of them, but they're really, really beautiful. So an 11-year-old who was very, very reliant on vocal stimming for self-regulation went an entire day without making a single stim noise, and that turned into 3 days, turned into weeks. And up until now, the mother has reported there has been no vocal stims at all. And then a 13-year-old who previously needed constant motivation in class, ask me how I know. He recently completed an art project independently, and then he engaged in this incredible, thoughtful discussion about color theory. And his mum reported that he overcame these fears of going to the mall, and he went with her without any issues at all. And I mean, it just showed this absolute increase in wanting to engage and in confidence, which was really remarkable. A 6-year-old non-verbal student, and I mean, I think Adam did mention it, and this was incredible. The child has never said a word in his life, and his mom messaged me that morning, and she said, he woke up, he took his mum's hands, he looked into her eyes, and he said, "Hi." And she was so shaken. She's like, I haven't stopped crying. You know, she was so, it was such an incredibly beautiful moment of connection. And that was literally the first time that's happened, which I thought that was stunning. And then this was very interesting. So a 16-year-old, her psychologist actually reported back that for the first time in the 10 years that she's been working with this child, it was the first time that the child was not clutching her teddy to her chest and rocking to self-regulate, but she was making eye contact, and she had remarkable clarity, and she was able to talk about the things that were bothering her. She made this real connection, and she was grounded, you know, and this was the first time in 10 years that she's been working with her. So that was quite a remarkable feedback that we had as well. And then my son, I think Adam mentioned this as well, and this was really eye-opening to me, to what I'm starting to see the pattern of what the remedies can do. So he's got the dyslexia and the dysgraphia, so he hates long writing projects and assignments. So he had this English assignment to do in class, and he was telling me, so I had to do this assignment, and I really didn't want to do it, and I started getting really grumpy. And I was like, okay. And he's like, but Mum, then I realized that actually I'm not grumpy at all. You know, I actually feel fine. My grumpiness is a habit. This is my 11-year-old. My grumpiness is a habit. So then I chose to just quickly finish the assignment, and then I could go back to my drawing. And this was mind-blowing to me, because it showed that, you know, like Frankl says, you know, between stimulus and response, there's this gap. And my son found that gap where he could check in and realize, this is not how I'm actually feeling. This is a habit. I don't want to feel that way. I'm going to choose this way. He had a choice. And I thought that was incredibly empowering. So from my observations and my talks with parents, teachers, therapists, and with Adam, it looks to be that what these remedies are doing, like Adam was mentioning, the neuroplasticity, to increase the neuroplasticity. Because what I can also see, we have quite a number of children with apraxia, you know, where it's almost like there's a gap, you know, like they want to say something, you know, or they want to do something, but there is this gap, almost like the neurons aren't connecting, right? And it's almost like this increased neuroplasticity helps them bridge the gap. And as a result, what we are seeing, what we are witnessing at home and in classrooms, is that the children are able to communicate easier, to regulate easier, and to connect like they want to. You know, it's like it's almost helping the brain bypass areas that maybe in the past gave them difficulties. Because I'm no expert whatsoever, but this is kind of like how Adam described it. This is kind of the manifestation of what it looked like, you know, in how the children changed from before the remedies and then after, say, 2 weeks of being on the remedies. And that has been really remarkable. Yeah, and just, you know, coming out of themselves and to start to want to engage in the world in meaningful ways. Yeah. So I feel that in a field, you know, where progress is often very, very hard won and incremental, these outcomes feel really deeply significant. Progress for neurodivergent children is often very slow and non-linear, but it is real, powerful, and transformational if the right supports are in place. So this is still early stage observations, obviously, but I must say that the consistency and the breadth of the improvement feel really, really promising. And I personally think that as part of a multidisciplinary support plan for children with autism, this protocol has immense potential for improving these children's, and quite frankly, I think their families' quality of life. Like that's something that we have been seeing over and over. And the parents, shame, because, news spreads quite quickly. So, once the trial was full, I kept on getting phone calls from parents like wanting to join the trial, It has brought such a new sense of hope and possibility to many of our families. And to us, the professionals who are really committed to their growth and development. And I'm immensely grateful to Adam because, once all these phone calls started coming in, he sent remedies to us, where families, who are not on the trial can actually buy, and see how it works for their children. And I'm so grateful because, both my schools are entirely self-funded. And unfortunately, a large number of families cannot afford those kind of school fees. But now having the remedies, we've just been able to help so many more families, and getting really, really positive and very incredible feedback really from those families as well who are not necessarily part of our school community. So yeah, at Fowler House and NeuroNexus, we will continue to advocate, to innovate and to collaborate because we really believe that education must adapt to children and not the other way around. And the need all over the world is immense. I mean, when I first put an ad out, it wasn't even an ad, it was basically a little information about the school opening in January, end of last year, I got over 400 inquiries within the first month. And that was just Windhoek and surrounds. So the need is immense. But I think also so are the possibilities. I dream of a world where every single child, not just neurodiverse children, are embraced, and empowered to flourish. Right, so Adam, I was told 25 minutes, so I didn't quite do the 45-minute thing, but I did want to thank you for allowing me to share this with you. Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you very much. Yes. Hi.
Hi. Okay, so we've heard quite a lot. I don't think I need that. Oh, okay. I'll talk a bit quieter then. So we've heard quite, a lot about the benefits of these meds, but there's a lot of characteristics that come with neurodiversity that are incredible as well. So what's the effect on that? Are we still seeing, are you still having children that are more spiritually connected and more free thinkers and, all of these other beautiful positive traits that, come with the
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. Adam and I had a long discussion about it the other day. Absolutely. So here's what we've noticed is that it's almost like it enhances the child's ability to feel more emotionally secure, to be present in body, but it does not diminish the gifts. We say that every child has a gift, but especially your ASD children, there are some incredible, unique gifts there, right? And I hear what you're saying with the spiritual gifts. Absolutely, there's been no diminish from what I can tell. And like I said, I mean, it's only been a few months, but from what I can tell, all it's done thus far is to enhance, and children seem happier. There's a at peace, but there is no diminish in that which they already have. Does that answer your question?
Hi, as usual, I've got a couple at the same time. One thing you didn't talk about was the medication regime that the kids were on before you started, so maybe you could comment on that.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to understand the comments by the professional psychologists that you have on the school.
Yeah.
So what was their opinions of this? And then just obviously being a parent, I'm the same with the kid on the spectrum. I mean, just what would you ascribe the sudden explosion of prevalence of kids on the spectrum versus previous generations? I mean, that's the big question, but
That is a loaded question, and as we are online, I don't know if I can answer that, but I'll be happy to talk to you afterwards. It's such a contentious topic, isn't it? But to answer your first question, that was my first question as well. We do have children that present with pathologies, which obviously mean that they are on other medications as well. And the first question I had for Adam, can these remedies be taken in conjunction with these medications? I also spoke to the psychologists, and that was their first question as well. They wanted to know, because some of these children are on mood stabilizers or on anti-anxiety meds in conjunction with either Concerta or Ritalin. And like Adam explained before, to have a slow introduction to kind of see if there is any kind of negative effects. From what we've seen, there hasn't been any. And just to kind of really do it slowly and carefully. I also wanted to comment, I didn't comment when you asked Adam the question earlier about the attention deficit. So as I understand it, the original 3 remedies that Adam did for the spectrum protocol, and Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, so that doesn't necessarily include the ADHD or the ADD remedies, but from what we've observed has been incredible increase in the ability to focus and concentrate. I have a family, they have 2 girls, they're both on the spectrum. So the one is in Fowler House and the one is in NeuroNexus. And Fowler House, we just had our end of term concert now before the school holidays start. And the family was there with their other daughter from NeuroNexus. And after the concert, the mum came to me and she's like, Elsje, you will not believe this, but she sat through the entire concert and she was focused and engaged. She is 11, turning 12 now. This is the first time in her life that she was able to sit, concentrate, and focus. The mum was like shaking. She was like, I've never experienced this in my child before. But in the classrooms, we have noticed that as well. We have a lot of NeuroNexus starts at age 3. And I mean, I know there's many different views on this, but I don't want to put children on medication, or I don't want to recommend medication for as long as humanly possible, unless it's absolutely necessary, especially when they're so little, So we often say to parents, let's first try everything else. Maybe he is a kinesthetic learner. So let's bring the exercise ball in, and let's see if he will do his numbers while rolling on his tummy, or if he can stand up and sit down and like move in his station, whether that helps, and if he still gets the task done. So we try all these different things. We try diet, we try occupational therapy or speech therapy, but a lot of them are not on any meds when they start that small. And in that age group, we have seen tremendous improvement in concentration and focus from both the parents' feedback and from the teachers' feedback, where a child who maybe could sit for 10 seconds can now go 2 minutes, and then 2 weeks later can go for 10 minutes, and then we're like, okay, guys, let's see if we can stretch it to 15, because age appropriately, like then he's on par with his age group, So I think that it's got enormous potential for helping a child focus. I think even if it hasn't, it's not targeting that like directly, I think almost like a byproduct. Okay, like as a byproduct, that is something that we've been noticing.
So are you finding the parents taking their kids off Ritalin and Concerta?
I have had a couple of parents who asked whether they can, and our suggestion was speak to the therapist and see if you can wean them off and what the reaction is. So that is still in process. So I can't tell you what the outcome was, but I know that I think there were 3 parents who came and said, my child is like a different child. We would really like to actually go off some of these meds.
Thanks. I think that's a useful segue into the second question around what was the feedback from the psychologists,
Right.
who are obviously clinically Western medicine trained,
Yes.
and I guess obligated to follow those types of approaches. How did
Right.
how is that resolved?
So also now, remember, there is a difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist. So the psychiatrists, we have two here today, they are the ones who actually do the prescriptions. And we are mostly working with the psychologist. The psychologist will then refer to psychiatrists. So I'm not currently working with any psychiatrists directly. But the psychologists that I do work with have been incredibly optimistic and positive. And some of the best feedback that we've had have been from psychologists who have said, what have you done? You know, to the parents, like, this is a different child. Like that example of the 16-year-old. The therapist was blown away. She phoned the mother and said, what have you done? What has changed? Because in 10 years, I've never had a session like this with this child. And the mum almost, you know, forgot to mention that, oh, by the way, we started this trial last week. You know, and then she wanted to know more. So there hasn't been any negative kind of pushback from the psychologist. I think in the psychiatry field there possibly might be, but I haven't had contact with that as much. I hope I've answered your question. Oh my goodness, that's a huge one. It's massive.
Also appetite, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, like she mentioned, right? Like Ritalin really suppresses the appetite. But yeah. And that was another thing, just speaking of the food. We've had parents saying that children have been open to actually trying different textures, you know, and flavors, whereas they've been absolutely adverse to it before. And that has been an interesting, noteworthy thing, I think. My son only eats like 5 different foods, so it's like, yeah.
I just have a question regarding to especially the smaller children. You mentioned that at your school you start from age 3. Yeah. So the children that are on the spectrum that I've observed, the parents normally complain about it's difficult to get them to potty training. So you find that the child is like 5 years old, 6 years old, even going to maybe 7 years old, and they're still on the diaper because they just cannot master that, despite being in a special school or, you know. Right. Have you seen any results with that regards while on the trial?
Potty training specifically? That's so interesting. You know, that is one thing that nobody has commented on. But now I'm wondering, like, are all the children who are currently on the trial potty trained? Not 100% sure, but that's an interesting one. So, I mean, yeah, you bring up such an important thing, and it is a massive thing. We actually at NeuroNexus, we invited an occupational therapist to come do a workshop specifically on potty training next month. Next month's August, hey? Yeah. Because so many parents have asked, you know. So we very often, you know, just give the feedback of, again, make it visual. Have a reward system, be very consistent, have it part of routine, you know, make it a safe space, make it a relaxed space, you know, and you know your individual child. So you have that connection where, you know, you don't make it a place of anxiety or shame, you know, but you bring in a lot of elements that makes the child feel incredibly comfortable. And for our very little ones, we also say to the parents, if you are going to do potty training, do it in summer, you know, and just take your little one regularly. If you can just get them to sit, you know, even if they have to sit with the nappy initially, you know, and then you transition where can we maybe take the nappy off, you know, and oh my goodness, massive praise. If anything happens, whoo, it's amazing. I had to buy my son a massive Lego set to help him do a number 2 for the first time. It worked, but I mean, that's his intrinsic motivation, like Lego is his thing, right? And he was at that stage 4.5, you know, but you know, we got there. But yeah, no, it's a big one. But thank you for mentioning it. That's actually something I'm going to note to see if there is any. I mean, if you think about it, I think it should do, just because of the embodiment that it seems to bring about, the embodiment, the grounding, and the awareness. Like I know with my son, a lot of times I think the issue was he couldn't feel his body. He wasn't embodied. He wasn't even aware when he had to go. You know, he wasn't even aware if he went in his pants. He couldn't feel the sensation. You know, obviously occupational therapy helped with that a lot, you know, brushing the body, doing a lot of kind of deep compressions and help the child to feel in their body. But the remedies really do seem to really aid with that as well. So I would think that it would definitely help with that.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I mean, it's hard to say. No one's actually mentioned that directly, but you know, the more people are aware, or children are aware of their bodies, the easier it is for them to regulate whatever's going on. So, I mean, I can ask this on the other trial groups as a question, but obviously not now. But I mean, it is a good point. Yeah, and I know it is something that parents struggle with. So, yeah, well worth asking. Yeah.
Please excuse me if I'm putting you on the spot here, but I do need to clarify the governance around this.
Yes.
That you have no, as a school, no financial interest. You're not being sponsored. There's no
I wish.
linkage to using this product. And the second question that sort of hasn't been asked is, have you observed any side effects?
Right. Okay, so the governance around the school. So no, I mean, my schools got born out of, firstly, my personal need. I needed to have a safe space for my own son, and then that just exploded. And then when NeuroNexus came about, I mean, that's just a heart project, man. I'll never make any money out of it. I mean, the ratio for autistic children to teachers is 5-1. You know, it's incredibly, it's a very intensive, capital intensive program and setup. I mean, the school fees I charge just about covers the loans and the salaries and all of that. What is very interesting is that the government did contact me to partner because they don't have the resources to build special needs schools, and there's such a need. And what they want to do is to basically then, from their side, I think partly sponsor Namibian children to then be able to come to the school, you know, and not pay the full private school fees. And then your other question, oh, do I get any kickback from the products? No. No, I genuinely meant it. I am always looking for alternative and uplifting ways how we can help these children that are not mainstream, you know, or that don't have side effects. So many of these meds have such hectic side effects. I was on Ritalin from age 4. Hated it. I still remember feeling like I really resonated when that young man said, I can feel the chemicals in my body. Absolutely you can. And you can feel that you're not yourself, you're not aligned. I hate the thought that children have to feel that way, you know, like we're in this life, we need to, like Adam said, we want to be the best version of ourselves, right? So what has happened now, so parents, I've got the packets, and then the parents pay Adam directly, and then they come pick it up from my house. But I think Adam is going to eventually find a distributor shop that actually does it. I'm just going to send people that way because I genuinely believe in the product from what I've seen. Yeah. Did I answer everything? Did I miss something?
And no side effects that you have.
Oh, the side effects. Yes, that is an interesting one. So I'm not sure if this is a negative side effect. My son, at some stage, I think it was around week 3 or 4 of being on the protocol, had very emotional days. He's a highly sensitive child, but he did have days where he would cry. And then I would ask him, what's wrong, Harry? You know, why are you sad? And he's like, I don't know. You know, I just feel all these feelings, you know. And then I asked Adam about it. And he said, you know, just maybe reduce I think it was the Cloud9, you know, by a few drops. But when I thought about it, I wondered, is it because he's embodied more than he used to be? And actually he has these feelings, but because he's so zoned out sometimes that he doesn't connect to the emotions. And now that he's really embodied for longer periods of time, that he can feel the emotions in his body and he is actually able to express it. Because it wasn't grief or negative sadness, if that makes sense. It was more like he genuinely felt sad and was like, oh my God, I don't want my child to feel sad. Like, is something wrong? But then when I really thought about it, I thought that, I think that might be it. That's my sense that is what it was.
Was he on Ritalin before?
No, my son has never been on Ritalin, no. So as far as side effects go, that's basically the only kind of, I don't really think it's a negative though. I actually think that what it meant is that I reduced the Cloud9 drops. But yeah, I don't really see it as a negative, although initially I did think like, oh. It was a passing phase, but it does still arise every once in a while. But I'm actually so glad for it because it opens up these windows of conversation where I'm like, can really connect and be like, hey, why do you think you're feeling this way? And he's not really a talker, but it's actually sparked some very, very interesting connecting conversations with him.
I wanted to find out with regards to PDA. I don't know if you experience a lot of that
We
at
have
your
a
school,
number of PDA
but has
kids.
that helped? Has that
Tremendously. In fact, those were the children we saw the most drastic results in.
because for me it was weird. Like something happened with my son, and then the PDA seemed to just, because of the anxiety increase, it really presented itself in a huge way.
Right.
Um,
Pathological demand avoidance. They have the highest level of anxieties of any humans on earth. Like they're constantly with this high level anxiety.
So I was also just wanting to say to the other lady that perhaps because I realized after so many years after that the PDA with regards to toilet training, that was a big issue. And that is actually probably what was the most, it was very enlightening. When he started experiencing it, I realized that it's that strange feeling that they actually feeling and they don't want it to happen. So they
Right.
prevent themselves from
Right.
actually going. And that is a big part of the potty training. I had a huge issue with my son. So just letting you know. He's now 12, but back then it took him until about 4 years old to get him out of the nappy, but it was like he could go for a wee in the toilet. He wasn't scared of the toilet. We realized that as well. But he had to have a nappy on when he went, and he would hide and run away, and he would hold it in, and he would.
Sure.
We had him physiologically checked, everything. It wasn't that. It was all just part of that. His body is demanding that he has to go, and he just couldn't stand the fact that it was a demand. That his body, he was like, I am not allowing it to happen. And he would have constipation and all these issues. So, yeah, it was very distressing as a parent because it's imperative that they go. But yeah, it just took time and patience. And we initially, because nobody explains this stuff to you, is that you feel like you have to fight it, and your understanding of life and whatever is how your parents taught you, and you have to unlearn all that stuff.
Absolutely.
And it's
not care what anyone else thinks.
yeah,
Because it's
and it's
your
not
child.
even that. It's like you get bombarded with so much information because you're so worried that you're doing the wrong thing, and then maybe it's the right thing, so you try another thing and another thing, and none of it works. And then you think, well, maybe I must just go with what I'm feeling. Like as a mother, just accept it. And I think once you get to that acceptance part,
100%.
it really works out much better for us.
100%. I think, as parents with children with ASD or who are neurodivergent, we need to have so much grace for ourselves because it is a challenging journey, right? And it's sometimes quite an unforgiving one, and society can be so harsh and unforgiving. And I think that was one of the most valuable lessons I got out of raising my little bear. I stopped caring what others thought. You know, if he would have a full-on meltdown in Discam, I would stand and I would let him have his meltdown, because he clearly needed to get that nervous energy out. And people would say the most revolting things to me, you know, but I don't know, you kind of get this mama bear kind of like thing. We're like, you know what, this is what my child needs. And then you would like look up and be like, okay, off we'll go, you know, but actually to get rid of that kind of ingrained like, oh, I'm so sorry, I have to apologize, you know, like, this is your child, he is your child, you know, and he's a human being in his own right, who is navigating the world in the best way that he can, you know. That was quite a powerful transition for me, like a powerful mind shift. Thank you.